After getting rejected at a key level, Bitcoin is now dumping on its way to $100,000. In today's video, we'll be going over what just happened and what you should be paying attention to if you're trading this market. We'll also be going over my summer chop thesis, and we'll be talking about Bitcoin dominance. If you enjoyed the content, make sure to smash that like button and subscribe. Let's jump right into the video. To kick us off, as usual, let's take a look at Bitcoin. As we can see, we are now below the 100 moving average, and we are below the daily open. So right now, there is basically nothing below here that is stopping Bitcoin to go all the way down to the bare minimum $100,000. Now, of course, if this 12-hour candle ends up making a wick and we can bounce on higher, then at that point, it would be another bounce. But for now, at the time of recording this video, it does look like Bitcoin wants to go ahead and move lower. So let's just cover what happened over the course of the past few days. So when Bitcoin was just chopping around in this range, I was telling you that we were likely going to get some kind of pump to liquidate some shorts. Now, we got that pump to an all-important daily level. If you've been watching the channel, you know how important this 106.2K level is. If I go here on the chart, we can see that it set the previous resistance area on the daily time frame when we had that previous all-time high. If I zoom out here and go on the daily time frame, we can see that we kept on wicking above this level, but we never had a daily close at this level, which was why I was expecting some kind of resistance there. Now, if we go back to the 12-hour chart and I zoom into today's price action, what we can see here is that we did pump all the way up to that level. We got a wick above that level, and then we saw a massive rejection for Bitcoin. And right now we are sitting just below 102.6K. So what is next for Bitcoin? Because there's still a lot more shorts piling into the market, and we'll get to that later in this video. But right now, a lot of people did end up going long when Bitcoin made this pump. But I was telling you that we were going to get a pump and we were likely going to come lower. Now, you'll also remember that if we were to hold this level as support, which unfortunately we didn't, the next target would have been all the way up here because there was a ton of liquidity right above $108,000 to $109,000. Unfortunately though, because we did not break above 106.2K, or I should say because we did not hold that level as support, that is why we ended up moving lower and aggressively took out a lot of those longs that piled into the market when we got this initial pump. So what is next? Now, no one has a crystal ball, but I can tell you with absolute certainty that Bitcoin dominance will continue to increase. I actually posted in my Telegram group today making fun of everyone that was calling for altcoin seasons time and time again whenever we had a red weekly or monthly candle for Bitcoin dominance. Do you remember this candle back in November? Everyone was saying, this is it, altcoin season. Then we had a massive wick to the upside around February, which was after the inauguration. And you know what happened. We ended up closing green. So everyone was calling for altcoin season every single time we had some kind of minor reversal in Bitcoin dominance. But as you can see, the trend is clear as day. And as I've been predicting, we will be getting closer and closer and breaking above 66% dominance. The real question is, will we target this wick, which was actually set all the way back in December of 2020? That brings us all the way up to 73.5% dominance. Now, not calling for that quite yet, but I do think that if Bitcoin dominance is to break this important region and then hold it as support, all of a sudden, we're starting to have conversations about 70% dominance. And this is whether Bitcoin pumps or dumps. It doesn't matter what happens here. Bitcoin dominance will likely continue to increase, especially if we go back to my main thesis, a choppy summer. Now, let's zoom out a little bit, look at the Bitcoin chart. We know that last summer we did chop around a lot, and then we had a massive breakout. And actually, we chopped around well before the summer as well. This was a very painful range for most. Now, I don't think that the range this year will be exactly the same. I do think it'll probably restrict itself to the summer, and then afterwards we can have a massive breakout. Now, this also repeated back here, which of course was around a bear market. However, if we take a look back into 2021, we can see here that we actually broke out of this range at the end of August, and then we set that new all-time high. However, I don't think that this scenario is likely because of everyone comparing to the 2021 top. So if we take a bar pattern here, this was one of the patterns that everyone was talking about that I didn't think would play out exactly as people are saying. And let's just take this and move it to the current date. And as we can see, it is starting to look very, very similar. This is what everyone is worried about, or what everyone has been worried about. And I talked about the fact that I don't think that this is the most likely case scenario because we have different monetary policy than we had back in 2021. I actually do think that Bitcoin will find its way into a range over the course of the summer. This pattern will not play out. We are not headed into a bear market quite yet. We will have some more aggressive pumps, but for now, of course, this is a little bit painful for those of you that are heavy into altcoins. I've been advising you on the channel to not go into altcoins. I maybe shouldn't use the word advise because, of course, this is not financial advice, but we've been talking about how altcoins were not the play for quite some time now. So I hope that at least that influenced some of your decision in terms of how aggressive you were with altcoins. Now, Bitcoin right here, what range are we going to get into in the summer? Because right now, the question is, are we going to hold $100,000 and then maybe, just maybe, this is the range that we play around in the summer? I would beg to differ. You'll remember in my last video, I talked about how I do think that we will be seeing Bitcoin back below $100,000 at some point. We got a very nice bounce from this low over here if I just zoom in a little bit more. And yes, it caught everyone by surprise, bringing us all the way back up to this high liquidity zone, which had a lot of shorts liquidated. Then, right around this area, everyone went long, and of course, Bitcoin came right back down. So perhaps this is the range. The one thing I noticed with these ranges is that it tends to have a little bit more of a bearish trend, and then we have the massive breakout afterwards. So let's see what happens. Of course, this is a little bit of guesswork, but if I were to guess, I do think that there's a possibility that the Bitcoin range starts coming down and down and down into the summer, and then we have the massive breakout. You can already see that it's starting to establish itself. If I zoom in a little bit further, excuse all my drawings, but you can see that it's starting to establish itself. Perhaps this was hitting the top of the range, and then we will continue to chop around in a little bit of a bearish pattern. Now, this pattern eventually does go ahead and break to the upside. And this is exactly what I've been saying. I think we will chop around a little bit in a downtrend because in the summer, there's usually little to no activity and no one is really paying attention to the charts. So I think that this is the base case. Of course, I will be enjoying my summer, but I will also be trading the charts and trying to make the most of the opportunities within this range. So if you want to join a community where we're making profits regardless of this market, then make sure to click the first link in my description down below. It'll bring you directly to Telegram, and within that Telegram, I have a separate group. The only requirement is that you sign up with one of my affiliate exchange links, make an early deposit, and then you're ready to go and trade within my free community. Now you can see here that there's this coin SSV that one of my analysts posted within my group, and you can see there was a 71% gain. We shorted the crap out of that token, and this was when Bitcoin was just chopping around. So if you want these kinds of trade opportunities, make sure to go ahead and join my Telegram community. Again, that is the first link in my description down below. Now, back to the Bitcoin chart. As I said, I still think we will continue to chop around, and what we can see though, and I do think this will catch a lot of people off guard, is the fact that more and more shorts are entering the market. Now you'll remember that this has been a common theme on the channel. However, we did go ahead and liquidate a lot of those shorts only to come right back down. Then a lot of people went aggressively long, and you can see here that there's a ton of liquidity between where we are right now, 102.5K, down to only $100,000. Look at all of this liquidity. And so this tells me that we could be going to the 100K level, and then we'll have to assess what happens afterwards. That is, if today's candle doesn't just end up being a fake out and another wick before Bitcoin trickles on a little bit higher. Now, we have seen this before, especially on Saturdays, so make sure you pay attention to the weekly close tomorrow. I will, of course, be filming a video tomorrow as well to keep you updated, but right now, it does not look promising for Bitcoin, and of course, Bitcoin has just been chopping around, so if you're holding Bitcoin, you're pretty relaxed, but if you're knees deep in altcoins, seeing Bitcoin dominance continue to increase, as we've been covering on the channel, is not a pretty sight, and I completely understand because I made the same mistakes in previous cycles. Now, to the Bitcoin chart, let's see what happens here because the summer chop is inevitable. We're getting into summer, and I really think that this will continue to play out. I remember about a month ago when I presented the summer chop scenario, I got a lot of hate on the channel. And now I'm starting to see that some of you are getting on board with this idea. So let's see how it plays out. But back to the liquidity chart, now a lot of people are getting into aggressive shorts. So make sure you're careful here because this is not what I want to be trading right now, especially when I see that the bulk of people in this market are now shorting. And actually, right before I recorded this video, Bitcoin was sitting just above $103,000. We had a $500 move to the downside, and the Bitcoin exchange liquidation map was still a little bit even, so it made it very difficult to tell where Bitcoin would be headed. Right now, though, as we can see, there is about $5 billion worth of cumulative long liquidation leverage if Bitcoin were to go to the low 90K region. Then, if Bitcoin were to go to 117.5K, which of course is not my base case, but all of this liquidity up until here would bring us to $15.5 billion of cumulative short liquidation leverage, which means there is 3 times more shorts in the market. So prepare yourself, because I don't think we're just going to crash into a bear market as a lot of these guys may think. Now, of course, we did get the downside move, and we did get rejected at a very key level. This is why I shared this level with you, and I have been repeating myself at this 106.2K level. It's a huge milestone for Bitcoin, and I was hoping that we can break above and hold it as support. We got that wick, and then we got a nasty move lower. Of course, things like the stock market will affect the crypto market over the course of the summer, and stocks traditionally don't perform that well over the course of the summer. So make sure you're also prepared for that. Now, where are we headed in the immediate short term? I don't have a crystal ball, but as I said, if we keep on getting 12-hour closes like this and it doesn't end up being a wick, then we could easily target this previous wick, which we held as support multiple times, and the key psychological level right around $100,000. And afterwards, if we do not get the bounce, that would mean 2 things. The first is that my prediction of going below $100,000 will likely play out. I've been talking about that scenario since we were back above $110,000. And the second would be that maybe our summer range isn't in this area, and maybe it's a little bit more bearish and it starts establishing itself like this. Excuse the ugly drawings, but basically we could be potentially holding the yearly open as support for this summer range, and that sits right around $93,000. As you can see on the chart, it's this blue line over here. So potentially that becomes the new bottom of the range that we're in over the course of the summer. Let's see what happens. At this point though, it wouldn't surprise me if during the summer, we do get some kind of very nasty wick to the downside, because we have seen it time and time again. Exhibit A would be last year. In this summer range, we know that right around August, we got a nasty wick which brought Bitcoin all the way down to $49,000. And that was from peaking above this range right around $70,000. You can see how many times we chopped around and hit the top of this range, then hit the bottom of this range, but we did get a nasty flush. And I think at some point, a nasty flush over the course of this summer could actually bring Bitcoin below $90,000, but we'll have to see how that plays out. And of course, with this relatively bearish price action for Bitcoin, Ethereum isn't doing too well itself. Last video, we were joking around about how weird these weekly candles are, marking a lot of indecision. However, right now, obviously there's still 24 hours until the week is officially over, but it is below this all-important weekly range. So if this becomes a wick and we bounce above again and maybe we start chopping around, then sure, that's okay. However, Ethereum is not looking good here because there's actually a lot of room for downside if we are to break below this range and get the confirmed break below. I actually have some of you within my Telegram community that said that my summer chop thesis influenced your trading decision. As we can see over here, I just want to say thank you for your amazing analysis. Your summer chop prediction is really playing out in real time. I took some really nice profits on ETH thanks to your analysis. I didn't tell you guys to short Ethereum. However, with the summer chop thesis, we will likely get some opportunities to be shorting some altcoins as Bitcoin shows a little bit of weakness. But we'll need to be careful, because if we bounce from the bottom of whatever range we establish, that is when altcoins can get a little bit of a pump, and that is also when Bitcoin dominance will see a little bit of a red candle, and that's when everyone will already start calling for altcoin season once again. But this time around, you know that it is not going to happen quite yet, at least until we get better monetary policy. And if you want to trade this market, as a lot of my community members are actively doing, you have the second link in my description down below, which brings you directly to Bluffin. Depending on how much you trade and how much capital you bring to the exchange to trade with, you can of course get some pretty incredible bonuses, up to $2,500 in bonuses, or up to $1,000 in bonuses if you just deposit $20,000 onto the exchange. Now you can use this money to trade with, which is an excellent opportunity if you were already going to trade with that kind of capital. We also have the third link in my description down below, which brings you directly to Weeks. This one is also great as an alternative crypto exchange because you can get up to $30,000 in bonuses, but not only that, they have their most recent promotion where with my link and my link alone, you get VIP 2, which means you also get 25% off all of your trading fees on this platform. That would be the third link in my description down below. Blowfin number 2, Weeks number 3, and of course, my free Telegram community number 1. And that sums up today's video. Bitcoin got rejected at a key level, 106.2K, which naturally sent it much lower. Ethereum is also struggling, currently below its weekly range, and if we get a weekly close below this range, it could get ugly for ETH and the rest of the altcoin market. Also, a lot of shorts are now piling into the market as Bitcoin just dropped by about $1,000 since I started recording this video. But you know my base case right now, we will likely have a summer chop and we will be wrecking both sides. Be careful if you want to aggressively short this market because yes, the patterns are suggesting that there's some bearish movement to come, at least up until the 100K level. However, if we get a bounce from there, be careful because those shorts will likely be targeted as we're starting to see 3 times more shorts in the market than longs. If you enjoy the content, make sure to smash that like button and subscribe, and I will see you in tomorrow's video where we will cover the upcoming weekly close.